this definitely is resulting in development of questions in your mind that why you should read economic survey in the first place, and that will make budget discussions even more productive when the budget session is there, and post budget presentation, whatever the discussions are. Within Ministry of Finance there is Department of Economic Affairs, and Department of Economic Affairs publishes this data under the leadership of Chief Economic Advisor. Currently we have V. Anant Nageshwaran, he is the Chief Economic Advisor. So be careful, be informed that economic surveys for the current year, current fiscal year, current financial year, well, the budget will be for upcoming financial year, that how the things are going to be, and so. Welcome you all, and in today's discussion we are going to talk about economic survey, because we know that, as you are aware of, that yesterday, that is 29th of January 2026, economic survey has been published, has been issued, has been tabled by Honorable Finance Minister, and this definitely is resulting in development of questions in your mind that why you should read economic survey in the first place, whether it is worth reading economic survey or not, what is this document all about, how it is going to be useful in the examination per se, or overall awareness. So in today's discussion, which is more a kind of overview of the economic survey, I am going to discuss three fundamental questions. First, what is economic survey? And second, which is I think the most relevant, that why it is important from examination point of view, how you can get benefited out of it. And the third, what are the key features of this year's economic survey, and how you should be moving further in this, right? So the first question, what is economic survey? Needless to say that if you want to make good policies, if you want to see that how your economy is progressing, you need some precise, testifiable and trustworthy data. And that's the reason why every country tries to provide their data in their best possible way, keeping the best practices of the world. So does India. And if you see, this economic survey is actually a flagship document of Government of India regarding the financial improvements, regarding the overall economic situation for the given financial year, what you can call as current financial year. So this economic survey 2025-26 is actually, 25-26 is actually overview. This 25-26 economic survey is overview of what? Overview that how Indian economy was in this financial year, and what are challenges, opportunities, how well we did, and what are still left, and so on and so forth. So in a way, economic survey is a flagship document of the Government of India to tell that how economy has performed in the current year. When I'm saying current financial year, current financial year means something which starts from 1st April to 31st March. So in this case, 1st April 2025 to 31st March 2026. But obviously this will raise a question in your mind that the data has been published and we still have, you can say, February and March to go. So how they get the data of the entire year? The economic survey for the current year largely relies on the data of 9 to 10 months, that is 1st April till November, and in some cases mid of December. However, we also use a kind of projection that is called as advanced estimate. This is a projection that how likely the economy is going to be in the next 3 months or next quarter, what you call quarter 4, that is January, February, March. For this we have one advanced estimate given by MOSPI. So overall these are the sources which they use. So by and large you can say this is a flagship document given by Ministry of Finance to tell that what is the situation of the current year, current financial year in terms of economy, and it is something which is, needless to say, precise and trustworthy data from the government. In India, if you see, this economic survey started as early as way back in 1950-51. 1950-51 it was started, but that time it was mere compilation of basic documents, hardly 18-20 pages document, which was talking about overall statistics of the economy. Obviously, PC Mahanlubis and VKRV Rao were the chief architect behind all these things. So, that is how we got economic survey started in 1950-51. But from 1951, 50 to 51, and up to 1964, this economic survey was presented along with the budget, so was taken more as a kind of auxiliary data about various state of the economy, various sectors of the economy. But from 1964 onwards, we started presenting economic survey one day before the budget, just so to make sure that people are aware about that what is the current status, and that will make budget discussions even more productive when the budget session is there, and post budget presentation, whatever the discussions are. One more thing you should know, that this economic survey which we are publishing here in India is published by Ministry of Finance. Within Ministry of Finance there is Department of Economic Affairs, and Department of Economic Affairs publishes this data under the leadership of Chief Economic Advisor. Currently we have V. Anant Nageshwaran, he is the Chief Economic Advisor. So be careful, be informed that economic surveys for the current year, current fiscal year, current financial year, well, the budget will be for upcoming financial year, that how the things are going to be, and so. So this is how we got what is economic survey, the background. Moreover, this economic survey is largely inspired by one document which is published by IMF, International Monetary Fund, and that is called World Economic Outlook. Not a surprise, when Dr. Manmohan Singh became finance minister around 1993-94, he thought that why not to present economic survey in 2 volumes, the way IMF does. IMF present World Economic Outlook in 2 volumes. So he thought this idea in 1993-94 that let's try to present economic survey in 2 volumes, where the first volume will be more about theoretical discussions and debates and analysis and suggestions to the government, and second volume will be more about the data part. Attempts were made for a few years, it continued also, but then it was discontinued. However, from 2010 onwards, we started having 2 volumes of economic survey, where the first volume was more theoretical with the debates and discussions and advices to the government, and the second volume was more about the data part. Needless to say that whatever advices economic survey is providing is not binding on the government, but mostly government don't overlook it. Why? Because they are integral system. And this continued almost 2020-21, but after that, when we got V. Anant Nageshwaran, he believed that instead of having these voluminous document, let's compile only one booklet, but that should have element of both. So the interesting part is that now we have only one booklet, only one volume, but it has the features of both volume 1 and volume 2, where now economic survey is not only talking about the data, but also gives some very good advices, put certain debates, and that is what makes this economic survey a document worth reading. Like if I could give a quick example, this year's economic survey, the last chapter, 16th chapter is a wonderful chapter which gives a set of advices. Like, let me quote one thing from there, that they have said that common sense, civic sense, and these kind of things. When we say civic sense, it's not just moral thing, it's not about value and morality, it has its economic bearing also. If people are following traffic rule, then time and other resources are better used. If people are following what is called cleanliness, it's not just about morality, it had its own financial cost also. So this way a very good debate has been presented, and that's why this economic survey is something which makes it an interesting document. Scrupulously made, and precisely data is presented. This is the first part, that what is economic survey. The second part, which I think is most relevant, that why you should read it. Again, economic survey every year, if you see that whatever economic survey advises, suggests, UPSC, in UPSC you will see that they have asked questions related on that. Let me give you a quick example, a few examples to make it more clearer to you. Like last year economic survey debated that food inflation was high, and food inflation was high because of that CPI was high, and when CPI is high, government has to go on back foot, RBI has to go on back foot, repo rates will be increased, and therefore bank loan will be increased, and so, and economy will be sluggish. So they advised that don't have this high weightage of food inflation in CPI, and try to somehow dilute it a bit. This is what was the advice given by Chief Economic Advisor. However, government has not taken it. But if you see, the UPSC has asked the question, what do you understand by food inflation? To what extent monetary policy is useful into that? So it's clearly visible that the debate of economic survey was taken. Similarly, even they highlighted that issue is not only of employment only, the problem is of employability also, because we are lagging skill development, which is requirement of the future market. Even they have highlighted, the question has been asked on employability part. They have highlighted that why it is important in the AI that manufacturing sector should be improved. So they have asked question on manufacturing sector. If you go last to last year, a lot of debate was there on food security, question has been asked on that. So the point, in fact, not only that, the very cover page itself, if you see 2020, the cover page was showing V-shaped recovery. Question was asked in your mains, what is V-shaped recovery? 2021 talked about unlocking and development of infrastructure with the focus on agriculture, because agriculture that time came as a silver line. Question has been asked on that. So the point I want to make it that if economic survey highlights 8-10 points of discussion, you will see that at least 1 or 2 or 3 are being catered in your mains examination. That makes it worth reading document. Now, I'm not saying that go and read the original document per se. Obviously, there are scripts and synopsises available by various institutions. In fact, we are going to have a class on that also. So, these things could be useful, but make sure that this is something which you are doing it properly. Not only that, even in prelims examination, you will see that whatever they have discussed as terms and terminologies might have been asked in your need and read when discussed in detail. They have asked about need and read in examination. So these kind of things are there even in prelims also. But one more thing which I think is very useful, if you read economic survey, please don't just chase the data mindlessly, that this percentage, that, and all that kind of heavy data. While reading economic survey, if you're understanding the concepts, the terms used, if you're understanding that whatever line of argument is, that itself is a testimony that your economy preparation is quite in shape. So it is also a kind of test to you that if you could read economic survey without much of difficulty, you feel familiarity with the wordings and terminologies, that means you are well versed with economy. So it also helps that way to know where you stand in your economy preparation, which definitely is one of the very important factor in your overall selection possibilities. So this way, when it comes to economic survey, why it is important and why it must not be overlooked per se. And third part, this year's economic survey, as I told you, even the cover page. So I'll start from there. If you see the cover page, this time the cover page is entirely focusing upon what? Export. Can you see that a lot of containers are there, and so we are focusing on export. And not only that, can you see a port here, a ship and port development, because we are focusing on that part also. In fact, as you will see that in that infrastructure chapter, they have highlighted about that why turnaround time should be reduced, and so. Civil aviation is something which they are prioritizing about. In short, the cover page is highlighting that time has come, that when the global headwinds are there, when there is global uncertainty, we should be focusing on more export, especially in those cases where the various countries, especially the developed countries, are now using tariff, energy, and currency as their financial weapons. So in the light of that, it is very essential that we should promote our export so that we get what is called a better saying in the global supply chain, and we can develop more resilient economy. So this is how the cover page has talked about. Even this year's economic survey, if you see, in total got 16 chapters. Each chapter is talking about one sector of the economy. If you see, the first chapter itself was about the overall economy, how it has performed, that is state of the economy. A very good comparison that when whole world economy is going through uncertainties, in fact well shown in this graph, this peak is showing. If you see that how in COVID the peak was there, and again the peak is much more than what was there in the COVID time. Global uncertainties are very high. Amidst these uncertainties, India is doing wonderful. And what I was just saying, this has been highlighted that why it is happening, why global uncertainties are towards peak, because geopolitical uncertainties are there, because energy and finance are being weaponized, because export is being controlled, especially in terms of technology. You know what is USA versus China war is regarding this. There is skepticism. People are skeptical about free trade, and despite that, in the light of this skepticism, India has achieved 8+ free trade this time. So, and then there is a competition for critical minerals. So, this first chapter tries to say that how, despite the fact that global uncertainties are on the surge, India is doing good. And not only that, if you see, as per the economic survey, this year, our GDP growth rate, and when I say GDP growth rate, it is at the constant price, that is 7.4% likely for this financial year, that is 25-26. And now again, as I was saying you earlier also, that if you understand what is GDP constant, GDP current, and GDP means GDP market price, GVA means GVA basic price, that means you're in good shape of your preparation, at least for these topics. So this is how, when it comes to GDP, growth rate is 7.4, and GVA growth rate is going to be 7.3. This reduction between GDP and GVA is signifying two things. Institutional development has happened and indirect taxes has reduced. This is clearly visible that GST 2.0 is working. So that's how we got GDP data. Even there's a forecast also that for next financial year it's going to be hovering around somewhere 6.8 to 7.2%, slightly lesser than this year, what we call technically meltdown, but that is very moderate meltdown which they have talked about. So next year financial year projection is 6.8 to 7.2% of GDP, and this GDP growth has increased primarily because of two things. As you know, GDP we use more from demand side, GVA we use more from supply side, and demand side equations consist of four basic things, that is called consumption per capita, private final consumption expenditure, that is C, then government final consumption expenditure, that is G, then fixed capital formation, that is I, then export and import, C plus G plus I plus X minus M. In these four, if you see that C, that is private final consumption expenditure, and this fixed capital formation, these two are the units which are doing wonderful. Our GDP is increasing because of it. That shows the paying capacity, that shows that fixed capital. Now let me remind you, when we are at fixed capital of 30%, fixed capital formation of 30%, let me compare this with China. China is at 15.3%, almost half of us. That shows that Chinese economy is towards sluggishness, and we are now on the surge side. So these kind of analysis, now if you are understanding these terms without any problem, if that clearly indicates that, okay, this chapter is well, you're thorough with, this is well prepared for you. That's how you get twin benefited from the economic survey. Getting that trend also, and gauging that how good you are with terms and terminologies and your basic understanding of the things. So this chapter has talked about it. In fact, here we have also seen that how they have talked about that fundamental balances like your fiscal deficit, primary deficit. In these kind of things, India is doing wonderful. India and Brazil, these are two countries, in fact, clearly highlighted, they are doing wonderful, while China, USA, they are not in that good shape. One thing which is matter of worry is, here it is shown that how yields are continuously, sovereign yields are continuously increasing. What is sovereign yield? Sovereign yield simply means when government take loans, you call it sovereign bonds, and whatever interest they are giving, it's called coupon rates. Whatever interest they are giving, if that is increasing, then we call yield is increasing. If yield is increasing, simply means interest rates are high. Interest rates are high means loans will be expensive, economies will be sluggish, and that's a matter of concern why the world economies are not in good shape while India is relatively doing better. So all these things are given in this chapter, wonderfully explained with the graphs and terminologies. Now again, while reading these things, we should not be too much into the data and analysis. We should be knowing whether basic terms are clear and whether we are understanding the trend analysis or not, in which direction things are moving. So this is how we got this chapter, and I just told you that they had given a special heading on this also, that how private consumption and investments are the primary driver. Even if you see that our GVA collection has improved better, especially if you see in industries, we are doing wonderful. In industries, particularly manufacturing, we are doing wonderful. And then services, in that services, financial services, real estate, and other professional services are doing wonderful. Now, if I'm saying all these things and you're understanding, okay, now I can recall GVA is calculated in 8 ways. No, these are from primary sector, these are from secondary sector, these are from quaternary sector. That's why I said reading this document is also a way to know where you stand in your economy. So this is how we got when we talk about what exactly it is. And as rightly said by Prime Minister, we are calling it a reform express now, that Indian economy is on a reform express where we are continuously trying to improve with the institutional development by fixing the fundamentals. This chapter is largely dedicated to that part. If you see, the second chapter talks about what is the fiscal condition, where the fiscal prudence is. Now, fiscal prudence is, again, look, as I was telling you, that they do ask question. Last year economic survey highlighted a lot about primary deficit. And if you see in the mains, in the prelims examination, there were 2 questions hovering around primary deficit. That's why economic survey, because whatever they are discussing is something which is there in the minds of the paper setter also while drafting the question, because this is the time eventually when paper will be also prepared for the upcoming prelims examination. So they have highlighted that how India is doing wonderful. This is what Dr. N.K. Singh has called fiscal gliding path. So on fiscal gliding path, India is doing wonderful. While in COVID, our fiscal deficit was 9.2. Now it has come to 4.4% for this financial year. And in the next financial year, projection is going to be 4.0%. We have to wait for the budget, that what budget exactly is talking about. But they will say something close to that. They may say 3.9, they may say 4.1, but hovering around 4. Now, this is called fiscal sliding path. And what is fiscal deficit? If you're understanding the term, that means you are good in public finance. If not, that means you need to understand these terms. So fiscal deficit simply means the total expenditure minus total receipt without debt. So this is how fiscal deficit is something which is continuously going down. But even more important data is called primary deficit, because whatever earlier loan has been taken, we also pay interest on it. If we subtract that from fiscal deficit, we are left with primary deficit, and that is just 0.8% of GDP. Just 0.8% of the GDP. That clearly indicates that we are showing fiscal prudence. Not a surprise. The survey is highlighting that how Standards and Poor has improved our ratings from BBB minus to BBB. So Standard and Poor, along with Moody and Fitch, these are some of the groups which gives ratings to the government. Standard and Poor has increased our rating to BBB because of these financial prudence or fiscal prudence. The chapter highlights upon that part. Not only that, interesting part is our revenue buoyancy is visible. Now, revenue buoyancy is whatever your GDP growth rate is, with respect to that, how much of revenue is increasing. So India is also witnessing revenue buoyancy, interestingly. India is also having, so let's say an example, if your GDP is growing at the rate of 5%, and your revenue collection is growing faster than 5, you'll say there's a buoyancy. So revenue buoyancy has been visible. And very interesting part is that in our total revenue, tax revenue collection, that means the money coming from tax, in that almost, if you see that 59% now belongs to the direct taxes and 41% belongs to indirect taxes. That's a good news, because if indirect taxes are more, that means poor people are being penalized. If direct taxes are more, that means rich are being taxed more. In fact, ITR returns has increased, and this number reduction from 48% in the previous year to 41% this year clearly indicates that GST 2.0 is performing. It's working. So again, GST 2.0 could be very significant from examination point of view, be it prelims or mains, you should be aware of. And let's say if they ask in mains and if you give this data, don't you think that your answers will be more organized? That's the relevance and the beauty of this document. So this is how we got when we talk about what exactly this. In fact, they have also talked about that how our GST is whooping almost 2 lakh crore per month. So plus, that makes it almost hovering around 25 lakh crore rupees per year we are getting from the GST. That makes a good amount, a fairly good amount in that way. So all these kind of document has been presented and shown. So here they have provided all these things, how fiscal deficit has gone to, primary deficit is 0.8, fiscal deficit is 4.4, and how our sovereign rating has been improved. Can you see that 59% is now what is called direct taxes, 41% is indirect taxes, GDP collection has increased, revenue deficit and all these kind of things has been there. How GST 2.0 is working, this has been highlighted. GST collection has improved, so all these things has been highlighted in this chapter, wonderfully written, which talks about overall positioning. I hope if you're understanding this chapter, again, the same thing which I am saying again and again, that it shows that your preparation is also good and you will get some substantial data which you can use in mains examination if questions asked, or even you may expect questions even in prelims. The third chapter has talked about monetary management and the financial sector, where they highlighted a few things, again, examination point of view, because let me remind you, they have said that how gross NPA of the banks has reduced to 2.2. Remember in 2011-12 it was as high as 11%. Now it has come to 2.2%. That shows the prudence of the, and that to GNPA we are talking about, without provisioning. So this is how that shows, if you're understanding these terms, again the same thing, that means your preparation is good. So this is how GNPA has come 2.2, that shows our financial sectors are doing good. And very importantly, monetary policy transmission is working. Now, monetary policy transmission already has been asked in the examinations. So monetary policy transmission is working, that means whatever repo rate changes were, has been benefited the people. So that has been highlighted. How our stock market is performing better, that has been said. In fact, there is a reference of, if you see that how our monetary policy is doing better and asset quality has improved. They have given a very good data. If you know that 2016 we got Mudra, and this time we got a data, very interesting data, and might be very useful even in mains examination, that how in Mudra scheme, almost 36 lakh crore rupees has been given, and very interestingly 69% of the beneficiaries are women. Now that proves that how not only financial inclusion is taking place, but at the same time it is also resulting into it's writing the story of gender empowerment as well. That has been highlighted. How this pension is doing better, especially Atal Pension Yojana, and that is more significant because Atal Pension Yojana more focuses on the informal sector, so their insurances has improved. NPS rolling has increased, all these things has been highlighted. So NPS Tier 1 rolling increasing simply means more and more people are moving towards pension reforms, which is a kind of providing them safety network for future. So all these things has been wonderfully said in this chapter, we'll discuss about that in detail further also. So this is how we got, overall what is this idea. Capital market, if you see that IPOs has come, and if you see that how there's a rise of IPOs year after year. So this way we got, things coming up. In fact, they had given special emphasis on this securities market code. Now be ready for it. Securities market code might be asked in prelims. I don't think they will ask in mains, because so far stock market things are overly asked in prelims only. But again, you never know. But security market code is very important now. This is what because it has replaced one existing rule of 1956, and that is very important development. Now this is where economic survey turns to be a wonderful document, not only for information but overall very useful for examination point of view. So this is how they have talked about. In fact, if you see SEBI launched investor protection tool also. This already they have asked in the prelims, because when it was asked, they have asked, the CS prelims this question was asked. Sabka Bima, Sabki Raksha, that amendment of the insurance has been there. So, and in insurance we had allowed 100% FDI, reinsurance norms has been changed. So all these things are wonderfully detailed in this chapter, that how insurance sector is the promising sector. So again, you may expect questions in prelims and mains. Not a surprise, insurance questions has been asked in prelims. So insurance, pension, and these kind of things may be useful, again prelims and maybe in mains also. So that is where it is very useful. RBI's free AI has been discussed, that how they had come with this. In fact, as I was talking about Mudra, they have talked about Mudra, that how in Mudra, can you see that women entrepreneurs have got 69%, it's a very big number. Very big and very encouraging for gender empowerment. So out of almost, if you see 36 lakh crore rupees in a round figure, 36 lakh crore rupees, 69% belongs to the women. That makes sense. And then even PM Swanidhi, which is especially for street vendors, if you see, that has also seen the whooping improvement. And it is also inclusive because each sector of the society got benefited by this. This chapter has given a very emphasis on that how, interestingly, despite the so-called bullying of Trump and the tariff weaponization, India's external sector is doing better. There are 3-4 things they have highlighted about in detail. As its overview, I'll say in very short. First thing first, our current account deficit has come to 0.8% of the GDP. Coincidentally, this data is equal to the primary deficit. So 0.8%, and it is because our trade deficit has gone slightly down. Though still we are in trade deficit, that means we are importing more of merchandise than what we are exporting. But services has done wonderful, especially high-end services, and that's how IT sector and other services has contributed more, a kind of balance is there, and that's the reason why we are doing better in terms of current account deficit going down, which gives a comfortable position to take that very risk which the trade policy is talking about. We have a trade policy 2023 which talks about promotion of export in systematic fashion. And yes, we are referring here in this chapter about that. Not only that, if you see that current account deficit is 0.8 and our Forex reserve is now 700 billion plus. It's 701 billion plus. That gives us a buffer of almost 11-month requirement. That shows that we are in the position to take some calculated risk by depreciating currency to promote export, as is one of the strategies used worldwide. So that thing has been highlighted in this chapter, how we are. Even our FDI inflow has increased. We got, because one thing is for sure, this is our answer to Trump's bullying, that now we are emphasizing on export diversification. And export diversification we are doing in 2 ways. One is identifying new destinations where we can go, and that this is where we have 8+ countries whom we have FTAs in SICA, SIPA type. Now you should know what is SICA, SIPA, all these things are detailed in this chapter. And then not only that, we are also identifying new items which we can, especially high-end items, not just small things, so that we can be part of global supply chain. We are working on capital goods, and that thing has been given in industry chapter also, where they had said that time has come for tech shift, that let's make heavy industries things, let's make capital goods, and so and so. So this is how this chapter is talking about, that how our FDI flow is improving. However, FII as expected is unpredictable, and we are witnessing a kind of roller coaster ride on FPI, but FDI is doing better. So that thing has been highlighted here. So this chapter has given all those details, that how we got various trade agreements, and so that how we have comfortable, can you see that we are having very comfortable position now in terms of current account deficit, just 0.8% of the GDP. So one thing, now this could be important from examination point of view. India now ranks first in digital infrastructure investments. FDI in digital infrastructure, this is what you call greenfield digital investment. Greenfield means something new. So greenfield digital investment is something which is India, can you see where we are? We are attracting $114 billion. We are at 1. Our closest second is way smaller than us. That is Malaysia. So now this could be important from examination point of view. Maybe prelims, or they may ask question, what do you understand by digital economy? What are the components of it? Where India ranks? So again, when you're giving that, recently the data is showing that how India ranks first in the greenfield digital investment from the world. Don't you give a better answer, more precise, more accurate? This is where you fetch better marks. So that is how, and the source is UNCTAD, that is United Nations Conference for Trade and Development. So this is how we get this data clearly indicating that India ranks first in now digital investments, greenfield, new projects. And not a surprise, recently our Republic Day guest, she said also that how India is becoming mother of almost AI for the world. So this is how this chapter has talked about that. then how we are taking the advantages of the global reorientation. Wonderfully written. This chapter could be very useful from even mains point of view for a fundamental understanding that why, despite all these things, we are having better FDI inflow. So that is what this chapter has talked about. They have talked about inflation also. Did you notice this time they have given 3 indicators? All are CPI indicators though. This is what we call retail inflation, not WPI. Here they are talking about headline inflation has gone down. It has gone down to 1.3 and core inflation has increased though. Core inflation is now at 4.62%. This is primarily because of gold and silver price rising, and overall food inflation has gone down. It's primarily because of vegetables and pulses prices has gone down. This is where they had given inflation figure, but they also highlighted in this chapter that how the upcoming year might be a bit of higher inflation side, around 4%, but within the range of RBI, that is 2 to 6%. So why it's so? Because we are going to maybe depreciate rupee a bit, and in that case we may witness a bit of inflation. That is what they have highlighted. Similarly, if you see sectoral analysis has been given, that how we are having what is called various sectors performing. So here all those things has been explained what I just said. Then agriculture, they have talked about that how in agriculture, although agriculture overall is not just the crop production, it's more than that. So livestock management is hovering at 6.1%. Your fisheries are at 7.2%. That's why, Ram Manohar Lohia used to say, earlier Ram Manohar Lohia once said that ek bigha khet, ek gai, apni kheti, apni rai. This is what exactly is now being visible. That is very important that let's work on the livestock. Livestock is something which is very supportive system to the agriculture sector and wonderfully explained. A very good compilation of various schemes and developments on 3. Now this is something which is going to be in your mains examination some way or the other. That how we are going institutional interventions, how we are having input support system, how we are having input, what is called monetary support system, so that we can make agriculture sector better with technological advancements, with better financial assistance and so. Services, this time they have given emphasis on that how tourism could be very important. From almost 62% of the urban employment comes from tourism. They have highlighted, they have talked about that how tourism can contribute to 30% of the total employment in the services. Again, might be significant from mains point of view, that because in tourism, what is tourism, how export in tourism, various types of things that are mode 1, mode 2, mode 3, mode 4. So all these things are explained in this chapter, wonderfully explained. This is what makes this chapter even more interesting. Similarly, if you see that they had given that's where tourism is. On industries, they have talked about why industries. This is where say that time has come for a shift, a paradigm shift for tech-driven things, and how industries are performing, how MSMEs are doing better, because MSMEs are the employment generators and export-centric. So they have talked about that thing. Similarly, if you see that in infrastructure, they have highlighted that why investment in infrastructure should be increased. They have talked about that how effective capital expenditure has increased in India. Effective capital expenditure, if capital expenditure is increasing, that means more money will come in future, more revenue will come in future. And if effective capital expenditure is increasing, that means you are also spending more on the welfare programs like VGG, Ramji, and these kind of things. So needless to say, these things are indicating that how overall economy is doing better. Then they had given chapters on how we have better education facilities, health, life expectancy has increased, IMR has gone down, nutritional level has improved, and national education policy is doing better. Very important emphasis has been given on urbanization also, and rural development, that how rural development is taking place, how urbanization is taking place. So in urbanization, they have given a roadmap of 20 years, that how time has come for 20 years roadmap. But again, I'll say my personal favorite still remains the chapter 16, which talks about that why people's contribution in terms of what is called civic sense, why it is important that they should be also stakeholders, active stakeholders in the economic welfare and all these kind of things, which I think is going to be very useful from mains point of view, and maybe useful even in fourth paper also. So that is how we got an overview of this year's economic survey. So as this discussion was in 3 visible parts, first part I talked about what is economic survey, second, which was more relevant for you, that why economic survey should be read and how you can get benefited, and third, what are the overview, key features of the economic survey. In the upcoming classes, we'll discuss on each chapter in a little more detail and how you can get benefited, how to take notes of these kind of things. So this was it about this discussion, I'm sure, and I hope that you are benefited from this discussion. Thank you. Have a nice day.